All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a fascinating journey into the ultimate machine, the human mind. We're going to explore how our brains systematically upgrade their own hardware and software to process the incredibly complex world around us. So I want you to think of your brain not just as a sponge soaking things up, but as a highly advanced, self-updating cognitive computer. To kick things off, Sir Frederick Charles Bartlett discovered something absolutely revolutionary about how we remember things. He found that our memories aren't just flawed or, randomly forgetful. They are systematically inaccurate. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, it means our memories are actively changed and manipulated by our previous experiences and any new information we take in. You aren't just storing a perfect, untouched video recording of your life, you are constantly overwriting and editing those files. So to really understand how this works, we need to pin down what memory actually is. Researchers like Schachter, Tolvin, and Elias Smith give us a really great foundation here. Memory isn't just some vague, abstract concept. It is a tangible, multi-stage structure. It's the combined total of all your mental experiences, which gives you the general ability to interpret the perceptual world and organize your responses to it. It requires a physical brain mechanism, specific types of information to process, and very clear principles of operation. Which brings us to a massive, really intriguing question. Why is your memory systematically inaccurate? Why does your brain actively go in and change the files it stores? Just by pondering this question with me right now, you are firing up your mental machine and actively engaging your working memory. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Defining the memory system. 2. The brain as a computer. 3. How memory develops. 4. Encoding and organizing information. And 5. Storage, retrieval, and strategies. All right, section 1. Defining the memory system. Knowledge isn't simply locked away in some static, dusty vault in your mind. Memory is a highly dynamic, multifaceted system of connections. It encompasses your entire lifetime's accumulation of perceptions. Remember Bartlett's finding we just talked about? Because knowledge units are manipulated and changed as new knowledge is acquired, your memory is very much a living structure. It constantly integrates new stimuli, which basically means new software is being installed and updating your existing files every single day. Moving right along, section 2, the brain as a computer. Within this whole model, we have a really crucial concept called cognitive load. This is defined as the amount of work imposed on your working memory by a learning task. See, your working memory has a strictly limited capacity, but it carries the heavy burden of processing incoming information, moving it into long-term memory, and retrieving it back out again. Funnily enough, just watching and understanding this very explainer right now is actively putting a cognitive load on your working memory, for sure. And this brilliantly illustrates how, much like a computer, your mind operates in 3 fundamental steps. First, it encodes, meaning it gathers and represents incoming data. Then it moves to storage, actually holding on to that data. And finally, retrieval, accessing the information back when you need it. Some theorists even suggest the brain's operation resembles a massive number of computers all running in parallel at the exact same time, governed by a master control process dictating how all that information flows. All right, section 3. How memory develops. According to researcher Flavel and his colleagues, there are 5 key developmental factors in how we process information. First, our brains undergo literal physical changes brought about by biological maturation and experience. Because of this, we get our second factor, an increased processing capacity, speed, and efficiency. Third, the actual physical connections in our neural network are modified. Fourth, we see the emergence of self-organized concepts as we adapt to our changing environment. And finally, we develop an increased capacity for problem-solving and metacognition, which is essentially thinking about our own thinking. It's basically a continuous biological hardware and networking upgrade. Section 4. Encoding and organizing information. Let's talk about capacity for a second. Physical maturation literally limits our hardware's capacity to encode information. A researcher named Dempster noted that the typical adult capacity for short-term memory is generally 5 plus or minus 2 digits. But here is the fascinating part about how we mature. A 5-year-old's capacity is about 2 digits lower than that, and a 9-year-old's is about 1 digit lower. Our mental RAM, so to speak, physically expands as we grow up. So the crucial point is how our daily experience pairs with this physical maturation. Studies show novice learners remember new information less well simply because they lack established internal frameworks. Experts, on the flip side, process information far more efficiently because they possess highly structured and organized domain-specific knowledge. They've already built the internal folders and software to quickly sort and store that incoming data. A huge part of this organization really comes down to categorization. Researcher Roche demonstrated that developing concepts relies on identifying similarities and differences. Grasping specific concepts, like, say, telling dogs apart from cats, is relatively easy because the physical differences are pretty obvious. But developing broad concepts, like differentiating all animals from all plants, is much, much harder. Moving from sorting household pets to comprehending the entire biological kingdom represents a massive software upgrade for a child's developing brain. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Storage, Retrieval, and Strategies. Let's move to and see how this actually builds across an infant's early life. Before 7 months old, an infant won't look for a hidden toy. It's literally out of sight, out of mind. But right at 7 months, they attain object permanence. Then, just watch how their capacity to sequence explodes. By 13 months, they can reproduce a sequence of 3 separate actions. By 24 months, that jumps up to a 5-act sequence. And by 30 months, amazingly, they can recall and reproduce a sequence of 8 separate actions. As language skills arrive, this ability to store and recall complex events only scales up further. Now, what's really interesting about all this is that the way we develop strategies to remember things, it is definitely not a straight line. Flavel made 4 key observations here. First, it's not linear. It often stalls, or actually, scratch that, it can even regress before it finally clicks. Second, these strategies continue to develop for months or even years after they seem mature. Third, there's high variability. Learners will often go back and forth between different strategies. And fourth, because of all this, learning requires individual integration. Every single person must be given the opportunity to create a unique learning program that works specifically for their own internal software. So, we've seen today that our memory is a highly dynamic, ever-changing system. We've explored how our mental hardware physically matures and how our software develops to categorize and retrieve the massive world around us. Knowing that your memory systematically adapts to every single new experience you give it, I'm going to leave you with this. How will you upgrade the software of your own mental computer today? Thanks for watching this explainer and keep learning.